I'm joined now by Governor Newsom. Thanks so much for joining me.
It's good to be back with you.
So right now we are at the Yes on 50 event, the rally here in California. A couple days from now we're going to have this big election that we've been waiting for a long time to finally fight fire with fire and neutralize what Republicans are doing in Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, and on and on. On November 5th, the day after this election, what does it look like if we see a blowout victory in California, we see Democratic wins in New Jersey and Virginia, we see a Supreme Court that stays 5-2 in Pennsylvania?
That's right. Love that question. It's the right question because it's the one everyone is going to be compelled to answer, including the Republicans. I think it's very interesting. Here we are on a Saturday at this event. Where's Donald Trump? He's not out here campaigning no on 50. He's not campaigning for Republican candidates in New Jersey and Virginia. No one wants to be associated. No one wants to be seen with him. That's how historically weak Donald Trump is. And I think that will appear in vivid three-dimensional ways on November 5th, to your question. Democratic Party will not only have won those races, but by a margin that also sends a message. And it also, I think, will reinvigorate not just the base, but the leaders in the party, Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries, in terms of the work they will do to have our backs as it relates to healthcare, food security, and the like. And I think will create a pathway, not just to ending the shutdown, but also a pathway to getting Speaker Jeffries back in the speakership or getting to the speakership. So I think it's a big day, big shift in narrative. Democrats not on their heels, on their front toes.
You asked the question, where's Donald Trump? And in fact, he's answered that question because he's been posting up a storm about what his priorities are. The latest being remarbling a bathroom in the White House. That comes in the aftermath of him renovating this, building this $350 million ballroom, covering the Oval Office in gold leafing, retrofitting a $400 million jet to the tune of $1 billion paid for by American taxpayers. And so what is your response in light of the fact that this is a week where we expect to see tens of millions of Americans lose their food assistance, where tens of millions of Americans are unsure starting January 1st what's going to happen with their health care, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's ACA subsidies. And this guy is just isolated inside of the White House, surrounding himself with more gold, more opulence, and more wealth.
Yeah, and or isolated down in Mar-a-Lago where he had a roaring 20s party.
Right.
Think about that. A roaring 20s Great Gatsby Halloween party, where he's posting this literally hours before 42 million people will not have any new money put in their EBD, their debit cards for foods during the holidays, during Thanksgiving, at a time where Halloween candy just cost folks 10.8% more than it did last year. A pound of beef is historically high, coffee's at historic highs. Look, it's vulgar. There's a reason people are putting Marie Antoinette memes up there of Trump. Let him eat cake. Because that's how this feels.
Yeah.
He's betraying his own voters. And the word betrayal is a word we need to use more often about Donald Trump. He's turned his back on his own voters. Red districts, red and rural counties, red states that disproportionately are the beneficiaries of food stamps, disproportionately are going to be impacted by a doubling and tripling in many cases of health care because of his recklessness and his total disregard for them and his obsession with one person only, himself.
In the lead up to this whole fight about whether food assistance would be released to Americans, you have Mike Johnson saying every day that there is nothing we can do. We can't possibly touch this contingency fund because we need to make sure that at some arbitrary point in the future that we have a contingency fund, some other emergency, but not this emergency. So they brought this thing into court. There were two judges, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, both of whom said that you have to release these funds, that this is an emergency just like any other emergency would be. People are going to go hungry right now. And the Trump administration's response to that was to say, we're going to appeal. And so what is your reaction to the fact that even notwithstanding the fact that fighting this battle unto itself is bad enough, when they could have been releasing these funds alone in the contingency fund, but then to go into court and say we're not even going to take yes for an answer, we're not even going to accept the political cover that the judges are giving us, we're going to actually fight this to make sure that these funds don't go out.
How do we even unpack that? Everything he said is spot on. And by the way, we were really proud in California to be one of the leads on that lawsuit, and very proud of this judge to state the obvious. who looked at the actual language that said the USDA shall appropriate contingency funds, and that includes, by the way, considerations for exactly what occurred, a government shutdown. That literally on September 30th, the USDA put out a press release saying these funds are available for precisely that use in case there is a government shutdown, only to see that disappear on their website. And now they're trying to erase any consciousness or memory or any sense of decency on behalf of the American people. Look, you'd expect that of Donald Trump. Let's push that aside. But you started that question
with Mike
Johnson.
Right, the most pious man in Washington, D.C.
Like that word, pious. It's a good way to describe him. Who's competing for bullshit, bloviation, and lies with Donald Trump. It's extraordinary what comes out of his mouth. Increasingly, it is beyond the pale. This is the indecency of a man of faith, of someone that literally, he read the same Bible I did. You look at Isaiah, you look at Luke, you look at Matthew, you look at Proverbs, Old Testament, New Testament. One of the central themes in the Bible, essential themes. It's not a suggestion, it's about the alignment to the Almighty, to God. It's a question of hunger and food. No decency, sir. Disproportionate number of people that will be impacted in his home district, let alone his home state. And so look, we can state the obvious, the state of mind of Donald Trump, the derangement that he's going to use hunger, starvation, to put families, children, during the holidays, the absurdity of that as he's celebrating, as you suggest, no longer it's likely to be $350 million monstrosity of 90,000 square foot ballroom where he's demanding $230 million from the American people for some tithing because of his feeling aggrieved about legal affairs in the past, where he's sitting there at Mar-a-Lago around the roaring 20s as we are paying the highest taxes since the 1930s in terms of these tariff taxes. And we just paid more, as I said, for Halloween candy, and we'll pay record prices for toys in a matter of weeks for Christmas.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. We have heard that the Trump administration is going to send poll monitors from the DOJ into a couple of states, California, New Jersey. As we look toward this process playing itself out, we know why this is going to happen. It's not because the Trump administration thinks in good faith that there's going to be some election irregularities. It's because they want to use this as a pretext to be able to cry fraud. That we've sent our poll monitors in there, and what do you know? We found fraud. Yeah. And so, knowing that this is going to happen, knowing that this is the basis for them to send in these poll monitors in the first place, what's your plan not to rebut, but to pre-but what's happening at the hands of the DOJ?
So, two things. Everything about that question is important, and I hope everybody heard what you just said. The pretext to accuse fraud, that is a preview, what you described, of 2026 in the midterm elections. Wake up, everybody. That is a preview of 2026. But here's what we've done. You may recall a week or so ago, I asked people to no longer send money in for Proposition 50. I did that a few days later than I otherwise would for one reason, that we raised a little bit more money to then make sure that we have a legal defense team, that we have a rapid response team, that we're monitoring the monitors. We're going to flood the zone in the 5 counties where he's sending the DOJ to monitor their activities, to call all this out in real time. So we're going to pre-butt the frame. We're going to in real time call this out. And soon as they start to move to create some doubt around the election results, we're going to flood the zones with voices, law, and reason. And that is exactly, I think, the approach we need to take all across this country next year. Democrats all across this country, I think, are going to have to take a similar approach.
One last question here, and that is that throughout this whole process, I've watched as you've been especially aggressive in terms of fighting on this Prop 50 front. And there were a few folks who came out and who said we wanted to practice good governance, and you've been really effective at swatting that down and showing why this is not about good governance. This is about fighting fire with fire and preserving our democracy. We have seen that California was the first state to move. We now seen some action in Virginia. Yeah. As we look toward the other states, we have a few possible weapons here. We're looking at Illinois, we're looking at Maryland. There is one Democrat in Maryland, Bill Ferguson, who already came out in defiance of what Westmore, the governor, said, in defiance of what the House, the top Democrat in the House has said, both of whom have expressed that they're open to this. Bill Ferguson shut the door to it. And this is not going to move forward in Maryland without his okay, because he'll control what goes to the floor. And so in light of that, what do you say, seeing the success that you've had in California, what do you say to somebody who's closing the door to this process in Maryland?
Well, I hope he feels very differently on Tuesday and Tuesday night when those early results come in. I hope he feels very differently considering what just happened in Missouri, what just happened in North Carolina. Hope he feels very differently after they move from this special session in Indiana. I hope he wakes up to the fact the American people that he represents in his home state, the American people are waking up, are going to demand more and better. I don't want to cast any aspersions on him because we need to convince him to move in our direction. I say our direction, we the people. It is not a Democratic direction, it's not a Republican direction. It's about our republic. It's not red or blue, it's red, white, and blue. And I say that sincerely. I hope he'll come to a deeper realization of what the hell is going on, not just with maps, but with masked men showing up in and around polling places, secret police, what's happened with the federalization of the National Guard. That will happen in his home state, unquestionably. And what's going to happen with DOJ monitored in his home state. If it doesn't happen this year, it's going to happen certainly in 2026.
And an actual last question here, and I have to ask this because we're in Los Angeles right now, and this question isn't the same gravity as all of the other questions we've been speaking about, but it's important for the city that we're in here. First of all, a big thank you for your work in terms of increasing the tax credit that the film industry has gotten here in California. Yeah. Now I'm going to be a real big pain in the ass and say that as we look toward what will, if I'm not mistaken, be your last budget next year.
You want more?
I want an uncapped tax credit. And so what's your openness to
that's
uncapping
good.
the tax
Look at your
credit?
working, man. We just doubled it. It just went into effect a few weeks ago.
And I
doubled
and I
it.
sat
$7.5 billion.
And I sat here and said how great it was. Now it's time to look forward.
I appreciate your advocacy. By the way, that is something that was considered last year, but under the circumstances, we had to temper, and I was otherwise going to lose the ability to double it from 350 to over 750, more than double it. So we were always open to argument, interested in evidence, and I recognize that's a big issue. Right. Good job with the advocacy.
That's it. All right, Governor Newsom, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.